the Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Andrew and Andrea, thank you so much for joining the podcast. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us. It's nice to talk to you.
Yeah, happy to do it. I've done a 14 or two, not too many, but a few. And when I heard of your record, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 9 days and change, right? Or something like that, 10 days.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to talk to this guy. I don't know how you did it. So yeah, I'm happy to have you on. And I want to talk about all this stuff that you've done, but like just off the bat, just before we get into the logistics, everything, like how on earth were you able to do that in under 10 days?
Well, a big part of it is, the logistics and stuff like that, and I've done it more than once. I did that once, kind of like when I was I look back now, I was like a stupid kid that really knew nothing. When I was 24, I just got captivated with the record and I went for it. And it was actually kind of a life-changing experience for me. And then I sort of moved on to other things for a long time. Just, I was always interested in like endurance racing and stuff. So I would do things like adventure racing, mountain bike racing. And then I kind of became a stay-at-home dad for quite a long time. And so it was just sort of a new era of life for me. And, that was basically my 30s, and then, and so then eventually, things changed in that whole world, like of mountain records and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember in 2012, a guy was going for it, but now he had a tracker so people could follow. And it was really exciting, just watching him. And he was actually a guy I had once met up in, he was from Boulder, Colorado. And it was really exciting. And it kind of got me fired up about it. And meanwhile, I had just that year when I had been hiking with my kids, I had met, my fiance, Andrea, and one of her friends up in the mountains. And they just had this, they were so excited about the mountains and they loved them so much that I started thinking to myself, hey, maybe these guys would want to be a crew, they'd want to crew me on this stuff, and so it kind of just got my mind ticking and it sort of just, I got going on that stuff again, and so, yeah, it was kind of a big, a whole lot of time that I wasn't doing any of that stuff. And then all of a sudden it was like back at it again.
But previously he's done the record.
Yeah.
He did it in 14 days previously. And so he knew about how to kind of go about doing this record. But what he didn't have was the order of peaks that he needed,
Right. Well, so, after I said it the first time, the very next year it got set twice again, and it got really improved on. And so it was so solid that no one even tried it again for 12 years. Basically, everyone, for a long time, people were like, wow, no one's ever going to beat that record. It was set by this guy, Cave Dog. But, there was a couple things that he had problems with, and so I had recognized those. And so I'd always sort of thought, well, here's a couple of improvements that could be made. Because really what he did was, there's 58 14ers in Colorado, basically. Actually, every time you read an article, it'll give you a different number for the number,
That's the thing. Like I keep
anywhere from 52 to 58 or 59. So
yeah. Depending on the website I go to, it varies. And people ask me, I'm like, honestly, I don't know. It's somewhere between 52 to 59. I have no idea.
Yeah. So that's a little confusing. The number we go with is like 58, and there's a reason. I mean, you could have a whole podcast on the history of the number of 14ers.
The only reason why there's a 59 is because if you do them in winter, they count like North Massive?
Yeah.
North Massive as a 14er, which isn't separate from Mount Massive.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. One of the fourth guy to climb them all in winter, he added on North Massive and sort of set this precedent. So everyone started climbing North Massive, but it's not really, it doesn't really count.
It's not a named 14er. It's part of Mount Massive.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I had, I had learned from the guys, that had set this record. He had basically, the way I had done it originally, it was just, I had chosen a very poor way to link them all up. I mean, that's a big part of the problem is what order you do them in and stuff like that. It's very strategic. And I had really made some mistakes. And he basically came up with this route that, looking back, he sort of said, that's just the way you have to go in the future. I mean, you can make little tweaks here and there, but basically his is the route. And so knowing that, So I had, here I went for it like 16 years later, and I had just learned a lot. And so I was able to really improve the time and take it to like, 9 days. But still, like that 14-day attempt in 1999 is just as precious to me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, is the difference between, I guess, winning or not winning or setting the record logistics over skill? I mean, is someone like that's well prepared and has the whole thing thought out and like, I'm going to meet you here, I'm going to take the car, we're going to drive, we're going to do this, that, and the other, versus someone that could be, I don't know, maybe even faster, like just physically faster, but just doesn't have the logistics down?
Yeah, well, we just did like a whole presentation on this, and we kind of divide it into bubbles. And there's like a logistical bubble, there's a mental category, there's a fitness category, and then there's a luck category. So it's not just one thing that goes into a record like this.
And it depends on the athlete too. Like some guys are definitely like super strong, like in terms of fitness, right?
Yep.
And so that's, their speed, whereas someone else's strength might be mental. Like maybe that person can go all night because, you're going 10 days and basically, you don't stop to sleep at all. You're only sleeping when you're getting driven from mountain to mountain.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of it is mental. After 4 days of that, you're basically sleepwalking out there. You're dealing with hallucinations and injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah, we always say that we can go we're decently fast because you have to have some sort of speed to do this in a time frame, but we're more able to just go and go. Whereas some of the people who have gone after Andrew's the record in time coming, they would be days ahead of him by like day 2, but then in day 3, and then they would crash. So it's kind of like the ability to just go for days and days and days is kind of our strength more so than the speed.
I sort of tell people like I'm like the ultimate turtle in the tortoise and the hare race, in the sense that I am slow when it comes to like comparing my individual speeds. But back in my early endurance mountain biking racing days, I sort of learned that, okay, I'm just sort of a middle of the pack guy in terms of speed. But man, if you just keep going, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, then somehow I would always perform, pretty well. And so I discovered that was my strength, was the endurance part, which kind of sucks because it means I have to suffer a lot of pain,
I mean, that's part of it. I mean, I don't know. And you said luck, which I think is something people don't talk about enough. There's so much that like, it could be bad weather, right? It could be maybe, I don't know, you twist an ankle. There's so many things that could happen that could slow you down, right? Like even, I don't know, I've done, I don't know how many, 11, 12, and I only started a few months ago. I've only done like, I think 11 or 12 of them. And there's the harder ones, weirdly, I was fine. And then there was one day where I was doing, which one was this? Grays and Tories, which is a very popular one. Like it's not like particularly hard, but I was struggling. And and then later I was trying to figure out like why. And I was like, I haven't eaten anything in the morning and I barely ate anything last night. And just all these different things that it's not necessarily the mountain itself that's harder. It's just other factors that go into it and make your experience not as pleasant or more difficult than it should be.
Yeah, there is exactly right. There's a lot of factors. One of the big luck factors is definitely weather, and so like, usually, it hasn't played out this way for me like lately, but like when I was a kid, always like the summer monsoons started in like the middle of July, what that means, you have all this moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico and they create all this moisture and you get these afternoon thunderstorms. And so lightning is one of the big fears when you're out there, so that's why they always tell people that are doing 14ers, get up early, you want to be heading down by like noon or something like that. But when you're doing a record where, you're trying to go, set these records, you have to be out there at all times of the day. So if there's a lightning storm, you just kind of suck it up and go. Yeah. And so it can be scary. And so a lot of times I would adjust my start date based on, okay, I want to beat the monsoons, but then I'd be hitting like, just with the bad luck, there'd be a whole bunch of snow. For some reason, the snow was really late that year. So then you've just got all kinds of snow. And so there's just a lot of factors. The last time when I actually said it, we had tons of rain. I mean, it was just raining every day. We even got, there was this landslide where basically the mountain fell away just behind us, and the trailhead up to Lindsay was closed for 2 years, you know, basically after that landslide. Yeah. So, I mean, if we had been caught on the other side of the landslide, I mean, I don't even know what would have happened. Yeah, we would have been done. You know, as it was, we had to abandon a vehicle because there were still some washouts in front of us and run down the road to get to another support vehicle. You know, so yeah, there's all kinds of factors. And so, you know, that's sort of like, you just have to be adaptable, you know, for stuff like that. You know, what's another big one? Oh, and like you mentioned the injury one. You know, that's a tough one because, like, you know, we spend so much time in the mountains. You can take millions of steps and be totally fine. All it takes is one bad step. And if you think about that, on every step, you got really good odds. You know, it's like there's only a 1 in 5 million chance I'm probably going to twist my ankle, but it could happen at any moment and you're basically screwed. And it does. You know?
Yeah, it happens also, like, weirdly on the things that you don't expect. It's almost like it's not the hardest, but it's the easiest. You know, it's just like, we're like, oh, this is so easy, I'm not even paying attention. It's like when I like, for example, sometimes when I do a lot of like Muay Thai and I spar, and sometimes the people that I'm like, oh, this is going to be an easy spar session, those are the ones that I get injured with because I'm not paying as much attention versus the guys that are bigger. I'm like, oh, okay, now I really got to pay attention and, you know, be just more alert to what I'm doing. So I feel like sometimes when you're on the mountains, it's similar. Like the easy stuff is sometimes when it happens versus like the harder stuff, like the big scrambles or whatever it is.
It's like tearing your knee on a cat track when you're skiing, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the double black that you're going down.
Yeah, because then you're super alert. You're like focused, hyper-focused on everything. But I guess what time of year were you doing this? Because as you said, like, I don't know when it starts here, but I noticed it around like June or something, right? Where like the monsoons, those.
Well, this year, you said you just moved here this year. This year was bizarre. We had a heavy monsoon season, which is kind of weird because we're still in the midst of this massive Western drought. So this was actually a beautiful summer, like looking at it, because, you know, previous years, the last several years, usually end of August and September, our air has just been nothing but smoke from all these wildfires all over the state and in California and all the smoke blowing through. So it's been really rough. So this year was just beautiful because there was so much moisture just from these monsoons. They lasted a long time. They started early. And so it was a pretty beautiful year for hiking 14ers. Yeah. But typically the considerations, like I said, that would be, you know, there's there's the whole monsoons and the electrical storms, right? Because that's like one of the scary things is you have no control over like lightning. You know, you're up there, it may hit you, it may not, but it's so scary because you don't have a lot of control over it. Whereas, you know, you may be climbing some hard technical section on a mountain, but at least you have control over that. You know, at least that's you making a mistake if you slip on a rock or something. But, you know, so things you don't have control over that are a little more scary. So another factor is it's really a lot mentally more challenging to be going in during the night when you're tired, you know, and so you want to maximize daylight, right? So I would always I'd be like, okay, you know, June 21st, basically we have the most light we're going to have all year. So I'd always be thinking, okay, it's better to be in June if you could. But the problem with June is you might have that late season snow, you know, and so that snow can be annoying. It can actually be helpful because you might be able to slide down some snow, but it can be annoying in certain places. So there's so many factors. Another factor is like sometimes September is like the most beautiful season to hike in here. You get these beautiful like blue skies where there's no storms. And so but there's a little bit less light, you know, because you're nearing the end of summer. So that was actually the first time in 99, I was like, okay, I'm going to start on August 30th. I'm going to get that beautiful September weather. But then it snowed for the whole first week. You know, it was crazy. And so you just like, I've just never, even other people that I've seen attempt the record, man, their luck, it's just terrible, you know? And it's hard because it's hard to be flexible because if you're out there doing something for 10 to 14 days, you know, and you need help, you know, you need crews to come and help you. And these people are like, they're taking time off from work and stuff like that. And so, you know, you already feel bad enough that, you know, they're basically spending all this time to help you out. And now what do you know, but they can't change their vacation dates, you know, so you might be forced to go when you can see a bad weather forecast coming in. So it's hard to be flexible as well.
Are there a lot of active people like are people actively trying to break this record? Is it something like a lot of people are chasing right now, or it's maybe not as popular?
Well, this record, I love this record. So it's actually, if you trace back its history, you can basically say that it started in the 30s, which was basically a father and his son went out and they were the first ones just to try to climb them all in a summer, And so it's kind of a cool story. And then it just keeps getting, better and better, right? Then another guy goes out and he beats their time and eventually got to the 30 days and then 16 days, it just kept getting, harder or, the times kept getting better.
Yeah.
And if you think about it though, they got more popular, the trails got better, information got better. So naturally it's always going to improve over time. You know what I mean? And even you'll learn a lot from someone that does a record before you. You can go look at the way they did it and you can learn a lot from their mistakes and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool how it builds on itself like that. But in the time since I set the first one in 1999 and now, there's been this big explosion in something called FKTs. And so if you're not familiar with that term, it stands for a fastest known time. And so basically these guys up in Boulder basically sort of coined this term and they started maintaining this website of fastest known times. And it's really, they recently sold to Outside Magazine. So now Outside actually, owns it. Yeah. And now, basically anybody, you can go on there and if you can find some cool route in your local area, and you just, you wonder, well, I wonder what the fastest time is to do that. Well, if there's no route, you can submit the route and see if they'll accept it as a new route. And then you can go out there and try to set the time. Or you'll see in your area, well, hey, here's a cool route that I like, and maybe I can beat that time. It's just kind of fun, is like a challenge, or to see what other people can do if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But so it is interesting so the Colorado speed or the 14er speed record that we're specifically talking about, that one's really interesting because back in the 90s, it was every couple years it would get broken, And then, as I was saying, in 2000, that Cave Dog guy set this ridiculous time. He beat it by 3 days when it already seemed like it was pretty solid, And then no one even tried it again for 12 years. And then when that homie guy did it, or he was the guy I mentioned that I was watching and got me all excited about it, and he didn't quite make it. He got to day 8,
Like an Achilles injury.
Yeah, he twisted his ankle early, and oh man, it's just, to me, what was inspiring is when people really push through the pain and they try to keep going, because he was injured. He went on for several days, and then finally you'd see these pictures of him just collapsed on the trail sleeping, and finally he threw in the towel, and so I just thought it was really cool. But there was a whole flurry right then, because then I was going for it. This other guy from California was going for it. I failed in 2014. I got injured. I made it to day 8.5, and I tried. I tried to keep going, but I had to throw in the towel with 10 mountains left.
Yeah.
And so there was a whole flurry back in 2015. And then since then, it's been pretty quiet, but in the meantime, all these other FKTs are just going nuts. And you're having a lot of people that are ultra runner. It's really big for the ultra running crowd, where they're coming in with the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail. These are trails that are 2,000 miles. They're setting fastest known times on these things. And anyway, the whole thing's just really.
Someone recently did the Appalachian Trail. I forget the guy's name, but he set a record. I think it was last year or 2 years ago, right? So it's just
yeah, that's a popular one. It gets broken quite often. Yeah.
I think he's a pretty well-known ultra marathon runner. I forget the guy's name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I feel there's not all the first ascents or first of something is kind of done. No one's doing a first of anything anymore. Now it's just who's going to do it the fastest? Who's going to do it in winter? Who's going to do it, on a tricycle? Everyone's trying to up the next person. Yeah. So it's just interesting to see, I guess, I don't know, the limits of human capability getting pushed, because every time someone thinks this is the fastest possible, and then someone 2, 3, 4, 5 years later goes and smashes it.
Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of funny. I think about that a lot because, if you read back to the early mountaineering, of these guys that were trying to be the first, and it was for your country's pride to go up there and try to be the first to climb one of these high Himalayan peaks, the Italians and the Americans, it was battling to get up K2, and I guess when the Italians got up there first, it was like they'd sent someone to the moon. That's how big of a deal it was, you know, so being the first on this exploration. But like, as you said, it sort of changes character when everything's already sort of been done. And, but I think people still have this like inner drive to go explore. And if you can't be the first to get there, then yeah, to do it and be faster, you know? So I think for me, there is kind of like a drive like that. It like, I mean, but it is funny because it's like, I've been extremely
like is stuffed out like we do. And we're like, yeah, we'll be the only people to do it because no one's dumb enough to do like what we do. Like, you know, I mean, there's an Elks Traverse, but who's going to do the Centennial Elk? So we go out and do that, you know, or we'll go out and try to knock out all the peaks in the Sawatch Range, you know, and it's just taking on these really huge adventures, you know. So I definitely think that that's a component of, you know, what we do, trying to just be the first people to link up a certain amount of mountains.
That is true. Like there is still that. So for example, what she mentioned a couple names, you know, you may not be familiar with like, so we called it like so we've submitted some routes to the FKT site. So one of these sub ranges of 14ers is called the Elks, and it actually has some of the hardest ones, you know, out there. And so, you know, there's an Elks Traverse where you just do all the elks on foot. You know, and that's a pretty cool deal. All the Elk 14ers, I should say.
It actually just got broken by some super speedy kid.
Little like 20-year-old, like 21-year-old kid just like flew it away. You know,
and like sometimes I'll get to the summit and I'm like, oh, happy. Like I'm like, oh, I feel like I did like, you know, not that I'm doing some crazy time, but like for myself, like I'm happy with like the result. And then there's like a 12-year-old right next to him, like, God damn it. Like, it's just like, this 12-year-old did at the same time, probably faster. It's like, I'm in no shape.
Well, that's funny. You know, that's actually one of our things too, is I've got these 4 kids. And while I was sort of like not racing and stuff, I was like taking my kids up the 14ers a lot. And so that was that is mental training because, you know, for the kids, man, do they suffer, but they're tough. You know, kids, they can be tough.
And nimble.
But anyway, like with this so with the whole Elks Traverse, then, you know, so we went and did a version where you also climb what are called Centennials. So Centennials in Colorado, you've got your 14ers, which is any mountain over 14,000 feet. And then the Centennials is basically just the highest 100 peaks. So it includes a bunch of the higher 13ers. And so we did this Centennial Elks Traverse, which was a super cool link up. I mean, it has some amazing traverses in it. Like, you know, of these, like, you know, just traversing being, you know, between 2 peaks, these routes that aren't normally done. Yeah. And there's several of them there and they're spectacular. Mm-hmm. So it's an amazing route that we've established, but no one's gone out and even tried it other than us, you know? So it kind of makes me sad because that's an amazing route, you know? It's one of my 2 favorite routes in Colorado, you know?
So you guys did you do that together?
We do. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
Oh, no, you're good.
Right.
I was just going to ask because I want to like, so my wife, she's done 2 14ers with me. And when I told her about your record, she was just like, I don't even understand how that's even humanly possible. So like, I want to just understand. And I know you're talking about the Centennials and I want to touch on that as well. So I wrote it down here. You did all the 14ers in Colorado, which is 58, right? Mm-hmm. In 9 days, 21 hours, and 51 minutes, correct?
Right.
All right. So that means you did about, what, 6 a day?
6 a day, yeah. Yeah, but on average, you know?
6 a day. So that means 6 a day. And then you have to get in the car, drive to the next place, which in Colorado can be, you know, 3, 4, 5 hours away. I don't know if it's the same ones or some other ones. So it's not like it's close. So you're essentially driving, I mean, all night, get to the next spot at night, do the next ones. Like, is that how it just went for like 10 days?
Basically, yeah. I mean, so basically I've got this huge spreadsheet, you know, see, part of it for me is the fun is, you know, we talked about the fitness, the mental, and logistics, right? So that's a big part of it is your plan. And you've got crews, you know, you've got someone who might be a 4-wheel drive person. You might have like an RV for people. Some people are maybe taking care of the food and stuff like that. So they all need to coordinate and be in the proper places at the right times, you know? And so, for example, you know, you get off, when you start, you do these 4 isolated peaks, you come off the train, crew's got to be there to pick you up. but only the 4-wheel drive guy can take you at that point because he's got to go over some gnarly mountain road to sort of get to the next set of peaks. Whereas meanwhile, the other vehicles go somewhere else, you know, and so they're going to meet you somewhere else. So there's this complicated spreadsheet, you know, it's like, you know, this person's going to be there, this person's going to be there. And so it really is fun, you know, to plan all that out. You know, but basically, you know, that's in the old days, in the 90s, when the times were more like 14 to 16 days, usually the person that was going for this was some sort of ultra runner, and it was really fast. And so they drive to not like Red Cloud Sunshine handies, you know, zoom up them really fast, get down, then they drive into some town, have dinner, sleep for 12 hours, you know, and then the next day go do another set of mountains, right? So it's like they're fast, bam, bam, sleep all night. When the guy, Cave Dog, came around, he basically treated it as if there's not like days and nights. It's just one continuous route and you just keep moving. And so now it's more like if you want to be competitive, you pretty much have to do a set of peaks, hop in the car, try to sleep while you're getting driven to the next one. And as you mentioned, it can be, you know, actually the long rides are few and far between. And it's just when you're going from one range to another. You know, there's like 5 ranges. There's the San Juans, Sawatch, Elks, Front Range. And usually when you're going in between those big ranges, there'll be a few hours where maybe you can sleep while you're in the car. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times it's not that much. You know, it might just be 30 minutes in the car or something like that. But basically, yeah, you know, you climb the mountain, get down, get in the car, stuff your food with a bunch of, or stuff your face with a bunch of food. You know, I remember Andrea was sort of like the nurse. You know, she was like taping me up all the time, massaging my legs. You know, I mean, there's so much that goes into it, but it's so
a team
hard.
effort.
It's a huge team effort. That's a big part of it, and it's so hard mentally. Like when I'm normally hiking, say with the kids, and we do a mountain, and you finish. And you think about, I've always asked this question, how much would someone have to pay you to turn around and go back up there, you know? And it's like, oh my, it'd be $1 million, you know? There's no way I'm turning around and go, that's how you feel. You feel so beat up, right?
Yeah.
But somehow, I don't know what it is, like mentally, when Andrea and I know that we've got to, we just keep going, somehow our brain it's in a different mode where it just knows we got to keep going. So it doesn't, and it's funny, there's a physical response to that too. Like when we actually finish, my body will start to swell and I mean, I'll have all kinds of issues, but while I'm going, that doesn't seem to happen, you know? Usually, sometimes it does. And then we got to get all the meds and, you know, deal with that, you know, but yeah, anyway, it's kind of mind boggling to me how the brain will just switch into this mode where you just keep going, you know, up another mountain.
Which was the hardest?
Oh, well, you know, it's really funny because mental is such a big factor on something like this. A lot of times the harder technical peak won't necessarily be the hardest, you know? So yeah, you know, Capital's got this reputation as being one of the hardest. And I'm always like, you know, afraid of like Little Bear, and I like to get those San Juans kind of done, you know, but I remember in that 2015 year when I did it, we got to Quandary, which is a pretty easy one. You know, it's like one of the popular ones. It's close. And it was nighttime and it had snowed all over the thing. And just mentally, I remember my feet were swollen. So I could barely get I was like, you know, you can be such a jerk sometimes because you're just, you know, you're so beaten down. And I remember I couldn't get my shoe on. So I like threw it across the van, and then like Andrea got me like a mismatching shoe that I could actually pull on my foot, you know. And then I got up there, and this trail is an enormous trail because that mountain has like a huge number of people go up there. Yeah. And just in the snow, I got kind of lost on the snow, and you know, so it was just hard. So I remember Quandary just being like the most difficult mountain, but you know, normally it would never be Quandary. I mean, there's plenty of other mountains that would be harder, but really it all comes down to like, you know, how tired was I? You know, I was basically sleepwalking at that point, you know, so. And
I can't imagine doing, again, after I do one, I usually, you know, I need to go soak my feet in some hot water, like shit hurts all over for the day. And then, you know, especially because also like for me from Denver, most of these 14ers that I've done, like you have to wake up 2-3 in the morning. So you sleep maybe 2 hours. I can't imagine doing one and then doing 5 more, right? Which, you know, some have, like not some, but one of them, I never know if I'm pronouncing this right, but the Decalibron,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm pronouncing it right? Okay.
Yep.
That one has 4, but all the rest, it's a full one. You have to get down, go do another one, get down, go do another one, get down, another 6 times in one day.
Yeah, well, a lot of
it. Get the physical, but mentally, like you said, that's a hurdle that is I think too big. I don't know for the average person to get.
There are quite a bit of our 14ers where we link up, which is not going up a mountain, coming all the way down. So we've got Bierstadt Evans, you've got Grayson Joyce, and then you've got a ton of mountains in the Sawatch where you can link up. I mean, there's this, group of 5 mountains that we do in 6 hours, and
really?
Yeah. And so it's really, how can you link these mountains up? It's not going up each individual mountain and coming down 58 times.
Well, that's a big part of the.
Are there certain rules though? Because
there is a big rule that's really important. I'll explain that in a sec. But I was going to say too that's a big part of the logistics. Is all I mentioned the timing and where everyone's got to be, but it's also like, you study these maps and you try to come up with super creative ways to link up peaks so that you're not always coming back and doing out and backs, so that you're out where there's no trails, trying to find creative ways to link peaks up. And so anyway, so she was mentioning some that we're sort of familiar with that are close by that we were really familiar with. There's another really popular line in the mountains called Nolan's. It's actually a lot more popular than the 14ers record itself, because the 14er record is like 58 mountains. It's 10 days. That's a big deal, right? But you've heard of ultra running. 100-mile races became popular for a long time, and a lot of times these people were like looking for what's the next big challenge. And so they started looking at this line in the Sawatch range, which is, there's mountains there. There's the collegians that are kind of well known, like Yale, Columbia, Harvard, Oxford, Belford. There's 14 mountains in this line. It's about 100 miles. And the only rule, and so they created this event called Nolan's 14. And for a while, it was an actual run where, people would show up. It was like an organized event. But then the Forest Service found out about it and they shut it down. They said, sorry, you can't have an organized event in the wilderness. And then, so it kind of died for a couple of years, but then people started looking at it as like this individual challenge, like this FKT, can I go set the fastest no time on Nolan's? And so if you look up, Nolan's, that one's is super competitive. It's one of like the premier routes that people go for, kind of like an Appalachian Trail record. And it's all about, you've got these 14 mountains, and it's all about how do you link these up in the best way possible, and so there's some, like sometimes you're running straight down a mountain with just nothing but loose boulders, other times you might go for a trail, but that adds a lot of miles. So it just sort of depends. So anyway, that's part of the allure to me, is like just studying maps and trying new things out and stuff like that. So there's a lot of places where the normal guidebook would have you doing, this mountain separately, that mountain separately. But if you get on the map and you really study it, you can find cool ways to link them up that makes it a lot more efficient. But the big rule I was going to tell you about is that sort of comes into play. I don't know. It's been around for a long time. It has a couple names, either the Colorado rule or the 3,000-foot rule. But basically the idea is, because we have a mountain like Pikes Peak and Mount Evans where they have paved roads to the top, right? So can you drive to the top and call it climbed? That's sort of this question that's resonated with like mountaineers for a long time. Well, can I drive, if I bring my brother up there and we drive up to the top, does he get to say he climbed the mountain? Well, so they, like I said, probably Colorado Mountain Club early years, they sort of came up with this standard that to call a mountain climbed, you have to ascend 3,000 feet, and this is just for personal, this is like, we're not out there. If you go to the standard trailhead on DeCalibron, like you mentioned,
for records.
Yeah, for records,
we're not talking about for personal achievement,
or for people that just want to be jerks and troll your accomplishments.
For it to be like counted and accepted by, I don't know, any governing body, whatever it is, you have to like you have to abide by this rule. But if you want to go climb a mountain and then Pikes Peak, and then use the train to get back down, it just as a personal achievement, that's completely fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You can count whatever you want, it's your accomplishment.
So the rule is, and it's super annoying in places, I'll tell you, but the rule is 3,000 feet. So the deal is, if the mountain's 14,050 feet, you need to start that hike like 3,000 feet below the sun. All right. Now, but this only applies so you get out of your car, you have to be 3,000 feet below the summit. And then and so you got to ascend 3,000 feet in order to call it a climb. But now if that mountain links up with another one, but you only drop a few hundred feet, like you mentioned in DeCalibron where there's like 4 in a row, you're allowed to go knock all those off. You don't have to like go up and down for all 4 of them. You're allowed to link them up. But the minute you get, and then you have to descend 3,000 feet off the last one, so you've completed that descent. But the minute you've gotten back in your car, you're sort of resetting. And now the next time you come to another mountain, you have to start with that 3,000 foot rule again.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really annoying about that rule is that it works well for some mountains in the state, but other mountains like this, the 10-mile Mosquito Range, it's hard to get 3,000 feet below the mountain. Sometimes you have to be hiking for like 3 extra miles, down this road because it's dropping elevation so slowly. So it's super annoying. And you really wish you didn't have to follow that rule there. So it can be annoying, but that's the big rule you have to follow.
Because I was going to say some of the mountains I remember I've done, I think they started like close to 12. I forget which one. So
like DeCalibron.
DeCalibron, yeah, Kite Lake's up there at like 12,000. Yeah, so for that one, we have to
like go further down the road to start the hike. So that would add like, I don't know, many, many miles.
Oh, it's so annoying too, because I don't really like those road miles. Like what we really enjoy are the rugged stuff. We like we like climbing, the loose boulder fields and just the mountain part. We're not really big trail runner or road runner sort of people. So that part to me is just desperate, got to get these miles done,
So Andrea, I know you're an accomplished endurance athlete as well. I'd love to learn a little bit more about, kind of you and what you've done.
Let me introduce her a little bit, so I mentioned, the intro. Oh yeah. I mentioned already that I met her in like 2012, and she was kind of like, in the mountains. We met on a cool mountain, South Maroon.
On the Maroon Bells.
And that's one of the famous ones. Like people that have never heard of a 14er that are listening to this, they've probably seen a picture of the Maroon Bells in like a doctor's office in New York. It's just like it's an iconic picture of the bells. It's beautiful mountains. Yeah, and so we met up there, which I still think is really cool. And at the time, she'd only climbed like 4 mountains, and she was just really tough. She was tough, and she wasn't afraid of heights. And anyway, I was hiking with my kids. My 5-year-old was there, so we were really slow. And I don't know, we met them. We invited them to come across this. Her and her friend, when I say them, to come across this traverse there. And so that's sort of how we hit it off. And we started hiking lots of peaks together at that time. But at the time, you never would have guessed that she'd go on to be this like gnarly mountain runner athlete, And just in recent years, she was started out, she'd be my support. But, I'm getting a little older. I'm like 47, and I definitely feel it in my joints and stuff now more.
We do a lot of co-ed things together. So I think that's also like he's taught me a lot about how to be tough and stick through things and go for a long time. We've done a lot of hard things.
Yeah, we started doing a lot of these hard things together. Like, we did the California 14ers. California has some really gnarly ones. Like they're kind of like a whole different category than Colorado 14ers. And so we went out there and we started doing these things together. And especially like on that Nolan's line we were talking about. And now just this year, finally, she's like was faster than me, So now I've been sort of taking the supporting role, and she did some really cool records this year. You think when you mentioned that doing 6 14ers a day is a lot. Well, she just set the record, including the men's record this year. So she beat all the guys too. She did 12 in one day. And so that's quite a challenge. 12 in one day. And
how's that even possible?
Right. Sorry.
It's with the mountains where you're like, okay, well, what are the mountains that we can link up in the most efficient way? Okay. Right. So we started,
DeCalibron, obviously, you have to do DeCalibron. That's 3 of them.
Cameron doesn't count on DeCalibron. That's an unofficial 14er. So with the.
It is?
Yeah. Because, we mentioned the 3,000 foot rule, but there's the rule for deciding if a peak is official. That's like this 300 foot rule. So basically the idea is, if you've got a ridge of peaks, how do you know what's a mountain? Well, the rule in Colorado is if you rise 300 feet from the low point with your nearest neighbor, or from your highest neighbor, highest neighbor. If you rise 300 feet, then you count officially. Otherwise, you're sort of unofficial.
North Massive doesn't count as official.
Yeah, it rises like 283 feet from the
so many rules, Mike.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, that's kind of like, when you have these ridges with lots of bumps on them, at some point you got to say, well, what am I going to call a mountain and what is just a bump on the ridge? And so you got to pick some number, I guess.
Going over to Lincoln, I mean, you have to go over Cameron. Yeah. I mean, it's just a little lump. Like, that's all it is, really. So. Yeah.
But it's one of the 58, but you can't count it for the 14ers in a day.
The reason why it's one of the, why we count 58 is because of the name. It's named by USGS. So any mountain, any peak that's named by USGS, is what is kind of like the standard now for how many 14ers.
I told you we could have a whole podcast about this.
Oh, we've got time. Don't worry. Wait, so I want to hear about this. How many was it? 12 in one day? 14?
Well, yeah. And so we started thinking, well, what are the first ones that we should start with? And there's a big history in the 14ers in a day record. And I guess
traditionally, so you have to do these easier link ups, right? Obviously. So if you Calibron, you're just not going to find it.
With your stand.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But anyway, like the Calibron is your easiest in the sense that there's your 3 for basically the price of 1. So that's an obvious one. You can't go do capital. There's just no way. That's way too hard. It would take way too much time, right? So you have to find these easy ones. And it just so happens
there is like a backbone to this, So,
right. Yeah. Just because there's a lot of easy ones that are close to Denver. So they're the more popular ones that you've heard of. Yeah. But they're also for mountaineer people, they're probably not your favorites just because they're kind of just kind of lumps. They're not the most exciting ones.
A lot of people probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A ton of people. Right. So Torreys and Grays, you mentioned you've done those ones. Evans and Bierstadt, DeCalibron right there. So now you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then it gets a little more interesting. Then you start, those are the obvious ones. Yeah. And then you start having to decide, well, Quandary is super easy, but it's only 1 peak. Is it worth it? You still have to do that 3,000 foot rule. So is it worth it to go one off it? Or do you head over to the Sawatch and do some link ups that are a little more difficult? So there's a lot of strategy involved there too.
Yeah. And the thing is we have a history with what we were telling you before is Nolan's. Mm-hmm. So we've done Nolan's a handful of times. And so we know the route. We know those mountains. And so within Nolan's, there's these 5 peaks that are basically, you have to climb them and it's smack in the middle of it. So once you finish those mountains, you're a little more than halfway done because you hit the middle of it, in the middle of those 5 peaks. And so we went out this summer to see how fast we can climb these 5 peaks. It's Columbia, Harvard, Oxford, Belford, and Missouri. And we actually, planning all of this out, we didn't really even have my real-time split. So we didn't know how fast I could do this or even if I could, if it was 12 was even possible. We were thinking 11 was kind of a pie in the sky number. So
just to give you an example, sorry to interrupt, but just to give you an example of what that looks like is we'll put together a spreadsheet and we'll sort of guess based on, okay, there's this much mileage or this much elevation.
Yeah, we're based on previous that we've had.
Right. Yeah. When we've done Nolan's, we've done that section so we can be like, well, but it was dark, so it'll probably be a little faster. And so you just guess and you throw these numbers on there.
Yeah, it's all a guess.
And then we're looking oh crap, we need an hour. It's like, oh, how are we going to get an hour? And so then you start going through the spreadsheet. You try to take, okay, maybe we can do that drive 5 minutes faster, or we'll use an ATV here. That'll save us 15 minutes. And so you start trying to get these times up. But then what she was sort of, and now let her go on, is when we go out and you actually just practice them. Practice over and over and you get some actual numbers you can put in there.
Yeah. And so, gosh, we've gone out. I mean, I always would drag him out of the house, and it's 8 o'clock at night and I'm like, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to do, Grays and Torreys and Bierstadt and Evans and DeCalibron tonight, and so. I
just wanted to stay on the TV or on the couch and watch TV, And
we're going tonight, I mean, I did DeCalibron so many times in the dark because, well, for me, 12 was such an intimidating number and we didn't think that I'd be able to do it. And so we're talking down to the minute if I did this. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, I have no room for error. So once we went out and we did Columbia through Missouri and we did that, during that time period in 8 hours and 15 minutes. And we were like, wow, maybe 12 is actually possible. So we were going out getting splits and then got splits for DeCalibron, Grayson Torres, Bierstadt, and Evans, and kind of realized putting everything together. I think that's when we came up with like 23, like 30, right? Was that the split?
Yeah, that's kind of was our goal time, like 23, 30. Yeah. Or I thought, there was like this padded version. Yeah. There was like we had the real version, but I hate to really count on those minute by minute. I always like to pad it a little because there's this big mental component. If you set these splits for yourself and you go out there and say you miss your split by 2 minutes versus you beat your split by 2 minutes. That doesn't sound like a lot of time, 4 minutes, but it can have this huge mental effect on Andrea. She'll go from just being in the worst mood, super annoyed and not happy, to like super bubbly and cheery and happy because she's ahead of her splits. So I like to give her a little bit of padding on those splits, to give her a chance to be a little slower, but still be happy.
Yeah, well, and it was cool choosing the route that we did. I mean, you'd be surprised like how much logistics really went into this. I mean, gosh, Andrew, he's like the logistical master. I'm so lucky to have him. I've learned so much from him, but he's still my logistical master. I need him, and so he's really, gosh, we put this plan together and it was just it was amazing.
It was kind of fun. We borrowed an ATV and I'm not a very experienced ATV driver, but we needed this thing. And so the day before we went and put it in its location, and Andrea was like afraid, oh my gosh, we're going to get there and it's going to be stolen. I'm like, come on, who's going to come out way out here in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah. But the thing about this 24-hour thing is that we didn't want to one-off any peaks. So we didn't want to do Quandary. We didn't want to do, I don't know, whatever.
Huron was a possibility. People were thinking Sherman. Yeah.
So there's these other really easy peaks that you could one off, but we're like, we need to fit in as many peaks as possible. But the problem with that, which is really difficult, is I ended on Bierstadt and Evans, but I didn't know how fast I would be. I didn't know, I needed to, at the top of Bierstadt, know I had enough time to get over to Evans and down 3,000 feet. Or if I don't, Bierstadt and Evans don't count. So it's not just if I don't get over to Evans and down, it's like you didn't do anything.
Yeah, you have to finish the descent of the 3,000 feet in order to include a whole group.
So my worst case scenario,
risky if you're finishing with a group.
Worst case scenario is standing on top of Bierstadt and being like, I have an hour to get over there and I've done it at my fastest in 55, just pulling out numbers, right? So it's that, and so having to make that decision sucks. And so I didn't want that to happen. So it was really important to have these really good splits. And when we started on Columbia, we ended up doing Columbia through Missouri in 6 hours and 6:15? 6:55. Yeah. And so that was great because that really saved me at the end.
She had like an hour just right there, over an hour of buffer time. And so that just changed the whole attitude to happy, joy.
I can actually do this instead of stress. Yeah. I don't know if I can do this. Is this even possible? Because once you start down that road, it's really hard for me to come out of that.
Yeah. What do you credit this I don't know, competitive outdoorsy bug that you got? Because a lot of people do 14ers, right? Like I've done them, thousands of people do them each year, but now a lot of people take it kind of to the next level where they're like, ooh, I'm going to break and smash all these records. I'm going to do 4 14ers at night just as a hobby, just like something fun to do as like a snack,
It's interesting. Like Andrew and I talk about like why we do this. It's this challenge. We like to go up against these challenges and yeah, there is like some competitive, I almost like when I'm out there, it's really hard. I feel like sometimes I'm like, I have a job and I need to get it done. It's not so much like, wow, I love this. This is so I'm happy out there. On day one of Nolan's this year, day one was awesome. I was like, this is the greatest. This is so awesome. But it's really a job and I have a goal and I want to get it done. And then afterwards I can celebrate. But while more so I'm out there, it's more of I have a goal and I want to accomplish it and I want to succeed because I know we're so capable of doing these things. And I want to see how far I can push myself and find a limit if we even have one. I don't know if humans have a limit.
I think, that's why I'm very interested in suffering, and endurance athletes suffer a lot. And even if you're going, just if I take it like 100, steps back, and when I go in, I'm doing 14ers and all the other things I've done, it's like I'm suffering a good portion of it. But yet at the end, there's this massive sense of accomplishment, and I've done something and I'm happy with myself. But like during the thing, I'm suffering, and then
right, they call it that like type 2 fun.
Yeah, but then like I can't wait to do it all over again.
And like it's addicting. So I say, like, when I finished Nolan's this year, I was like, oh my God, I hated that. Andrew didn't think I'd ever forgive him, and I'm like, great, can't wait till next year. Like,
yeah. So that's the thing. Like, I wonder if and I'm sure people talk about this a lot, but I'm just interested, like, have you ever maybe taken a moment to examine, like, what is it about being outdoors, suffering, having my joints hurt, everything hurts, puking, whatever it is, right? Just going through the motions, and then saying, wow, I can't wait to do this all over again in a week, in a month, in a year, whatever it is.
I know, it's weird. Like,
well, I attribute a lot of it to the human ability to forget pain.
Yeah.
And they always say that if a woman remembered what having a baby was like, they would never have any more babies.
Yeah.
But really quickly they forget the pain, and look at my cute little baby, and it's like, yeah. And I feel like the same way, and with these big records I've done where they've been so painful, and it's just you forget the pain really quickly, and then you. Actually, I was listening to one of your podcasts, the Yossi Ginsburg one, and he was talking about he had this traumatic thing, that happened 40 years in the past. Mm-hmm. And he wrote, if you write about it immediately afterward, you'll remember more of the details, like the pain you were in, stuff like that. But if you wait a while, then you have more perspective, and you can look back, well, how did that affect my life? Or, you can maybe look more at the meaning. But I just think that's that pain, and then you just forget how bad it hurts. Yeah. And then sometimes I'll get started again years later, and I'll be like, oh yeah, this hurts. They're like, dang it, now I remember. Yeah.
Because I'm not really one much for like empathy when it comes to like Andrew doing records. I'm like, you got to push through. It doesn't matter. You have to do it. But it's so funny, when I did Nolan's this year, all I wanted was a little bit of empathy. I'm like, nobody understands the pain I'm going through,
Everyone that said Nolan's knows exactly what you're going through. You're fine.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting. And it's like, you want someone to understand. So it's like, when I have these doubts and people are like, oh, you did 12 in a day, you can get the record for Nolan's. And I'm like, but you don't understand. Like, it's different. Like, they're harder. There's more elevation gain. There's more distance. I'm not in a car. Like, and so, it's the greatest gift is to be understood, to feel understood.
But I always wonder, like, well, why do we go back again? Right. You experience it. And I just, for my own, the first time I did it, a lot of I just had so much bad luck. It was even, I even ended up finding a body, and I met the guy's partner was running down looking for help, and it sounded like I'd go find this guy, alive up there, and then I was going to try to help him down, but he was dead. And it had this huge effect on me, and then once search and rescue came and said, I could go, I kept going. And I struggled through these like nights where I was like bivouacking in freezing snowstorms. And it was hard. I lost, 30 pounds. And at the end, I just kept going, even though, I shouldn't have kept going. I should just quit. Who cares? This is a stupid record. No one really even cares about it. The group of people that cares about these things is so small. Most people, like, even in our own family, they're like, oh, you climbed 100 mountains, in 2 weeks. Oh, good for you.
I was just telling Andrew, I go into work and no one I work with even knows anything remotely about 14ers.
So really, but like I said, when I did do it and I finished, I feel like I just had this newfound, like, sense of self-confidence. It's like, man, here was this hard accomplishment and I pushed through and I did it. Mm-hmm. And it really changed me from that moment. And so I knew it was painful. I remember that, but it's still like, it was rewarding in that sense, and now, a lot of people that, do care about these things, they'll recognize me and they'll introduce themselves and say, hey, how's it going? Oh, you really inspired me, blah, blah, blah. And I just think that's kind of cool too, because like in my programming, nobody's ever like, oh, it's an honor to meet you. Your code is amazing, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's something like that to just want to be good at something, you know, and be a mentor for other people. So anyway, I think there's a lot of different factors. And then there's the whole, like Andrea mentioned, the whole type 1 fun versus type 2 fun. Type 2 fun being like, it's not fun at the moment, but after you reflect on it, it's rewarding and fun, you know?
I think there's a competitive nature. I mean, we know our ability, like we know we're capable and our capabilities and our limitations. And so when it's like, we're sitting here and we're like, we know this can be done. Like, I know I can do that. You want to try it, you know, and you want to go out and you want to prove yourself right, you know?
Yeah, I think the suffering part is just, I've always been interested in it because I think everyone, even if they're not themselves going out and doing things that they are suffering, right? Even if they're not in the mountains or out in the oceans or whatever it is that we like to do to push the limits, they will always look up to and congratulate and kind of stare in awe of people doing these amazing things. Right. Like if you look at like what's inspiring, it's always like athletes that like had to endure like and just dedicated their life to this one thing, or it's the other endurance athlete that climbed Everest against all odds or got to the North Pole or did all these things. So there is something inherently just biological in us to try to achieve these things, obviously, because as humans, we keep trying to push the limits. But even if you're not the person that's doing it, as just a bystander, an onlooker, you still kind of stand in awe because, you know, and I think deep within, you probably think to yourself, like, could I do it? Could I do something? There's something that's like a little voice in your brain thinking like, could I do it? Would I be able to like, would my body be physically able to do something like that? Would I have the mental wherewithal to withstand the weather, the pain, all that stuff. So yeah, I don't know, just interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. I think it's really interesting that the psychological stuff. I kind of got started with this sport called adventure racing. And the one most people have heard of was called the Eco Challenge. I'm not sure. Have you heard of that by any chance?
No.
Well, it was started by Mark Burnett, and he's sort of the guy that became well known for Survivor, you know, and then many other things. But his first thing on TV was called the Eco Challenge. And the idea with that race was you'd have a co-ed team of 4 people, and you'd go out on a course that would take something like 10 days, and it would have, you know, paddling, you know, running, hiking, mountain biking, all these disciplines. And you basically would have a map and compass. You wouldn't have a marked course. And you'd go out there for 10 days and there's no sleeping, you know, I mean, unless you need sleep. Yeah, your team would actually have to sleep sometimes, but eventually teams got so good they wouldn't even need to sleep for several days. Maybe it would be like a mental reset, a 15-minute mental reset. And that's kind of how I got introduced to the whole idea of just these races where you're just suffering, you know, just suffering, you got to suffer. And then making the mental decisions when you're tired and stuff like that. I just always loved it. I really loved it. It was to me, that was a lot more interesting than like, you know, people that are really fast, just maybe because I'm not fast myself. Yeah, so maybe I'm more interested in things, you know, well, I'm slower. So I'm more interested in the suffering because maybe I'm better at that than I would be at just going fast. But yeah, I think it's amazing. You know, we've got this on a wooden board up here. It's like one of the quotes we live by, which is, be not afraid of going slowly, be only afraid of standing still. And that's kind of this little mantra, you know, we'll say, you know, if you're going out there and you're trying one of these things, you can be demoralized because it's hurting so bad and you'll want to quit, but you just got to keep moving, you know, keep putting that foot in front of the other. And somehow it works. I mean, you can go amazingly slow. And if you just don't stop, you can do some of this cool stuff, you know.
It also helps with the mental. You eventually come out of your mental lows, you know. That's the whole big part of, you know, doing big things and suffering. And you kind of go through these waves of highs and lows, but you just keep going. Eventually you'll come out of a low, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's weird. Like when I'm, I don't know, hiking out in the mountains or from trail running or just even, honestly, even if I run just like on the treadmill, some of my best ideas and most creative moments happen then, not when I'm sitting in front of the computer and like I'm forcing myself to be creative and coming up with ideas and all this stuff. It's just like when I'm out there and I let my mind just kind of wander in any which way. And like, sometimes like, God damn it. Like, I don't have anywhere to write it right now because I'm trying to run. So I can't take my phone out and start writing this idea. But like, yeah, some of my most creative moments are out there when I'm doing this stuff and not when I'm on the computer when it actually should happen.
You know, that reminds me, I feel like I've had so many brilliant ideas out there, long since forgotten.
Same.
Yeah. Like,
$1 billion ideas just wasted.
Right.
So do you guys have any other, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, you know, one of the things too, we've gotten kind of interested in just talking about the suffering. I'm not sure if you've ever had anybody, have you heard of Wim Hof? You know,
Course,
like, yeah, the cold water guy.
Yeah,
so
I went to his seminar in New York like 3 or 4 years ago. It was
cool. Yes. Well, my dad recently sent me this link in, and he was like, "Oh, you know, this is going to change the world. You gotta listen to this." And so, well, anyway, I read this book that was about it, you know, and man, that really just sort of spoke to me. Like the whole thing. And, you know, one of the big premises, of course, there's all the benefits of the cold water and stuff. And I'm sort of like slowly dipping my toes into that because, man, does it hurt. And actually, we were in the mountains.
Physically and metaphorically.
Yeah.
What's that?
Physically and metaphorically dipping your toes in.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly. We went and, we got in this freezing cold river on one of our training trips. Yeah. And it was good. Andrea's actually really good. She just gets in like 3 minutes, wasn't a problem. I made it a minute. But then I got like a kidney stone right after that. And that kind of derailed our cold water immersion for a little while.
Yeah.
But what I really loved about it was, you know, one of the basic ideals is that we've sort of grown soft as a species with all of our technology, you know, to keep us warm and to keep us comfortable. And I'm just like looking at my kids and stuff like that. And I'm kind of like, you know, I got to toughen these kids up, you know. It's like, and if you look back at all of human evolution, and even before humans, you know, the evolution that created us, the amount of like suffering and toughness in all the species and in all of our ancestors, to me, that's really inspiring. And, you know, I want to we should be able to tap into that, you know, I think it's a big benefit. So anyway, just that whole concept of the Wim Hof and that whole book just got me super excited about a lot of the suffering. And like, for example, I just took my kids canyoneering in Utah. There's these cool slot canyons, and it turns out they've had a lot of water recently, and there was like a lot of water in there. Okay. And normally I would have not really enjoyed that freezing cold water, but I sort of was like, yeah, bring it on, you know, give me some cold water, you know. And so it's a lot of fun.
I mean, it's very interesting, you know. I did it in, I don't know, like 4 years ago, something like that. He did a seminar in New York in, I think it was February. So it was winter. And he had these ice pools outside. So you're standing there essentially in your underwear, right? Or whatever it was. And so no shirt on and shorts. And I'm in line waiting for the other people to finish because, you know, I think there was like 100 plus people there, maybe even 200, a lot of people.
Wow.
And February in New York is already very cold.
Yeah.
All right. So you're standing there, no shirt on, and it's a lot of breathing. And it's also the energy that you're getting from everyone and the guides there that are kind of hyping you up and like also calming you down weirdly. So there's an energy, and for a few minutes, you don't even think about the cold. It's not that it's not cold. It's not registering through your brain. And then when he puts you into those pools, the first thing, and you know this, is just shock. Like your body goes into shock.
Yeah.
And you're trying to, and like the guide is just looking you right in the eye, and he's like, breathe. And within like 30 seconds, you can do it. And again, it's not that you're not feeling it. It's just your mind is somewhere else. And it's just so interesting because for like, I think a lot of us, and this is why probably a lot of people do meditation and stuff, because it's you know, we do a lot of physical, right? We go to the gym, we do cardio because we want to get our body stronger, or I don't know, improve our cardio, et cetera. But like, we kind of forget to do gym for our minds. And I think meditation is that, which I don't do enough or at all. But when I was there, it was just so interesting how I was able to just let go of the pain, let go of the cold, you know. And it's not that it's not happening. It's just your brain is just somewhere else and your focus. So it was just a lesson how it's really mind over matter, you know?
Wow, that's cool. Now, so they have like a huge line of people, and you just hop in the pool. And...
Probably 200 people, and you're just waiting there. And the pool was obviously just packed with ice, and you're there with, I think it was like 10 other people in each little kind of like pool, and you're all like, holding hands. Not like, you're kind of holding hands with one another, and you're feeding off the energy of everyone else. And it's also a little bit like, in my head, I'm like, don't be a bitch. Like, I'm not going to be the first one out the pool.
Right.
That's not
Right.
So, you're just kind of, it was a very fun, interesting day. And he's definitely unique, Wim Hof. Like, he's got very cool energy about him.
How much training did you have to do before you got in that? Was it just like, 20-minute talk, 30-minute seminar about it, and then it's like time to head out to the ice baths?
I would say probably a few hours of breathing and meditation, and probably 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
We got into those pools.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was fun. So I was going to ask, are there any other records that you guys are looking to break, or?
Well, we have a whole slew that we're looking at, honestly, because, it's kind of like for us too, we don't have a whole lot of money. So it's like, we're kind of like limited to our area. We've climbed up this 14 years in Colorado. Like I'm like 860 summits, if you count repeats, so
really?
A lot of repeats. Andrea's at like almost 400 now. Right. So we would love to go branch out and go to other places. It's just hard with the kids and, with, the cost and all that stuff. So
you got to get sponsors and.
Yeah, right. And we're so bad at that, So anyway, it's like, so for us kind of like planning a vacation, sometimes you can look on the FKT thing and it's like, you can plan your vacation that way. You find some cool route you weren't aware of, and so there's a lot of little ones we've got planned. And next year, this year was kind of like Andrea's year. She actually set 4 FKTs. Yeah, 4 FKTs this year. We kind of talked about a couple of them. And then the year before, I did this big thing where I did all the centennials in like 20-ish days. And so that was like my year. And now next year we were thinking about making it more of a co-ed year again, where we're sort of just doing all these adventures together. I mean, that's really what we like the best. And so we've got a bunch of little just ones around, but eventually Andrea's interested in maybe going after a female version of the Colorado 14ers record. And what's interesting about that is that she's faster than me when she's fit now. So that's interesting. And but she like doesn't necessarily like, think she can go without the sleep like I can, so we'll have to sort of really plan out, well, how's this going to look? She can go faster, but she's maybe needing a little more sleep. So that'll be an interesting challenge. Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that'll be an interesting challenge. We've also, there's also neat mountains in other states that are nearby. We would love to branch out and see some new stuff. Like I briefly mentioned the California 14ers. Now, those are some spectacular mountains. We'd love to get back out there. There's a, you could do all the 14ers in the 48 states. So that would be Colorado, California, and then Mount Rainier in Washington. Yeah. So
I did Rainier twice, and I didn't summit twice, which sucks. I have to go back a third.
Oh, really? What, you get bad weather or something?
Yeah, like potential avalanche. So they made us turn back.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, God damn it! And the first time I flew from Israel to there, because that's where I'm from originally, and they were like, no one's ever flown so far to do the mountain. You're like the furthest person to ever come and do the mountain.
That's pretty far, yeah.
And then I had to turn around.
So I guess Axel did it twice. It was one with me and then with us together.
Oh, yeah.
But what was I? Oh, shoot. Oh, we did Rainier, in a day with his son. And that was pretty painful. Holy crap.
That's like 8,000 feet that you have to climb?
Yeah.
Like that, 8 or 10. And we had to start, most people like you go up to the midway and then you camp and then you get up at like 12. So we just started at like 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And we just went straight through.
We went straight through. And man, by the end, Axel was, they were pretty sad.
Yeah.
I've seen people ski it down. So
that would be the way to go, wouldn't it? Yeah. We just sort of, a few years ago, I did do them all the 14ers in one winter season. And that was kind of the goal for that year. And I started out on snowshoes. And man, that's not like snowshoes. Oh man, that's a lot of work. Not the way to go. Although in winter, a lot of times the snow out here, it's really fluffy and it's not consolidated. So even with snowshoes on, you might be like post-holing down to your knees, it's so really hard. And so usually the best skiing season is in spring when the snow is, it's gotten warmer and it consolidates, makes a nice snow base. But yeah, so skiing, that is a lot of fun. But then, of course, you got to deal with all the avalanche danger and stuff like that, so it's definitely dangerous. But yeah, there's so many different things you can do, in the mountains. And like, yeah, that's a big one. It's like winter, man, that can be a blast, but it can also, like, you can suffer. One time, this guy I met, he said they had this saying, and this guy had been in the Himalayas and stuff, like on Nanga Parbat, when 4 of the people on his expedition died. So he was like, yeah, the Colorado Rocky or the Himalayas is training for the Rockies in winter. And I always took that with a grain of salt, because it's like, you don't have the elevation, and you know what I mean? So, but it just goes to show you that they're not to be taken lightly in winter, you got to take them seriously. So
have you ever gone down to sea level to see, because I'm interested, I've been here a year now, and it took me about a month or so roughly to kind of acclimate to the elevation. And now that I've been training like pretty extensively for the last year, with hiking, with just training a lot, working out, I wonder if I would go back to sea level, how I would do with cardio related stuff, with hiking, with running, with all that stuff.
Well, we noticed, my family lives on the East Coast, and so we go back every year to the beach, and there are times, like, if we're fit, we'll go out running, and we're kind of trading humidity for elevation. Yeah. They both are hard, in their own way. Like, it's really hard to run in humidity. But I have noticed, sometimes, when I go home, my mile times are just faster, and so I can definitely tell that difference. But then again, it's really hard to run in humid conditions. So I desperately miss, Andrew loves the humidity, but I desperatly miss the dry Colorado.
Well, I love humidity.
I hate the humidity.
Well, for the skin, I'm so dry here, so dry. And when I go there, it's like, oh my God, I don't need to have lotion on all the time. It's like amazing.
No one tells you about the dryness in Colorado, by the way. That's like one of those unspoken things. When we moved here, I was like, God damn, it's dry. Like all of a sudden, I put lotion on, stuff I never had to put on before.
Oh yeah. And certain people are drier than others, certain people are drier. And so that's what I love about the humidity. But, for me, it's always been a mixed bag. So when I I always think, because, I'm sort of a fair weather fan for the Denver Broncos, but so it's been a while for me here. But I always wonder, why aren't they always the best team? Like they train, they play their games at 5,000 feet. I feel like they'd have this huge advantage wherever they go. When they go to sea level, seems like they'd be running circles around everybody else.
Yeah.
But they they don't. And
it's interesting.
Yeah.
But is that down to cardio, or is that lack of
cardio, or is that talent?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because, for example, I'm a massive martial arts fan, and I love watching UFC, and I know there are gyms out here in Denver. And when the fighters from those gyms participate in, let's say, not even sea level, they can go maybe to New Mexico or places where the elevation's a bit higher. For the most part, they cardio-wise, not talking talent, skills, cardio, they outperform their competitors. So there is something about training in elevation. I just don't know if that translates with, all the other aspects. You still got to have a good coach, good team, strategy, talent, etc.
And I've done some races when I was in adventure racing, more like these one-day adventure races, and where I went to Santa Barbara, where you're sea level. And now I just never really had a great race for some reason, but I don't know if that was the reason. Maybe it was because it was really hot or some other factor. There was once when I was younger, when we went to Wisconsin, and I ran and I ran and I ran, and I just never got tired. And I ended up getting really bad shin splints because I ran too much. I just, I wasn't getting, the cardio system. It just felt like it could go forever. So I feel like there's definite benefits, but like I said, it's just been a mixed bag for me,
No, humidity is legit. In where I come from, it's 99% humidity, at least all summer long. So you're just, once you step out the house, you're walking for 10 minutes and your shirt is just water.
Now, are you speaking of Israel?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
New York's pretty humid too, though, to be fair. In the summertime, like by the time you get to the subway station, you're already sweating profusely. So that's not fun either. Not a fan. Anyway, guys, this was a lot of fun. I think about an hour and a half flew by. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us on here. It was fun to talk to you.
Yeah, it was a blast. If people want to find you guys and learn more about what you guys are doing, where can they find you?
We have our Instagram account is the number 2 Summit. So we share an Instagram account. It's basically just all of our adventures, all of the records that we do, and kind of our training throughout the year, and just anything you'll find us outside.
We've been meaning to get a website up because we've been starting to we like to hike with people. Like the people we really love to take up in the mountains it's like we have this niche where it's people that have done most of the 14ers, but maybe they're afraid of a couple of hard ones, and they want a guide or something. So we really love hiking, up with people like that, bringing a big cake for them to eat on top, stuff like that. So, yeah.
We want to use the A2 Summit, that's kind of like our name. Yeah. And so we want to make our website and kind of get that up and going. But
because it's me having to do that, it's probably, years before that gets done.
Well, I'll be happy to eat a cake at the top of a summit one day. If you guys want to take me up, I'll be happy to. That sounds delicious. I actually, it's so funny just before we finish, I did, what was this? Elbert? No. Yeah, Elbert's the highest, right?
Yeah.
And there was a guy on top of the summit with a massive, jug, 2 jugs. One had Twizzlers and the other had pickles. And he was just handing them out to people, and massive ones.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, A, you're awesome. And B, I was like, how did you carry that up here? Because those are probably 7-8 pounds. So you're carrying 16 extra pounds.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, you're an angel, my friend. Thank you. I took a pickle, by the way.
That's a good way to train, because you have all the weight to go up and then you got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So and then you don't have to carry it all down and destroy your knees. I like that.
Well, anyway, guys, this was awesome. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.